Hey, everybody. Welcome to Operation Freedom's very own Department of Advanced Research. You may have had a lot of things on your bingo card this year, but the Operation Freedom Department of Advanced Research segment, starting with the Pennsylvania polka, was not one of them. No, in all seriousness, guys, that's what I figured I would do there is save everybody the trouble of having to watch the so-called crypto summit tomorrow, forthcoming by President Trump and others. Because I can tell you that's exactly that's all they have to do. They don't have to explain anything. All they have to do is literally yell "buy effing crypto." That's the only thing anyone's going to hear out of it. Everything else is just going to be noise. The crypto bros have already decided that this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. So as I was joking, and where this whole intro came from is I literally said to Dave last night in one of my more um, outlandish moments of heated kind of meltdown was they could literally play polka music for 4.5 hours and then have Trump come out and yell "buy effing crypto" and people would at this point. So hey, it's an easy visual and it's funny. But in the reality of the situation is, guys, the reason I'm doing this video, I had no intentions of doing a DAR this month, let alone today. But having sat around and really given it some thought, I think it's important to put a timestamp on it, and it's important to kind of, I guess, illustrate how obvious a disaster this is probably going to be. Okay. And now I say strategic crypto reserve because it's not even just Bitcoin anymore. And we're going to get into that in a second. But this is being recorded. What is today? Today's Monday, Monday the 3rd. So hopefully this gets out the same day because I believe the crypto summit is tomorrow. Also, as you may have, the more observant amongst you may have noticed, this is going to be a smoking flight, guys. Just because the level of ridiculousness that we're about to cover, I can't get through without at least one or two cigarettes. So you have to bear with me on that one. Hey, Walter Cronkite smoked on the evening news back in the day. We're bringing it back. All right. So no, seriously, guys. So as President Trump continues to talk about this crypto reserve, first of all, it's not just Bitcoin. That's probably worth clarifying right now. When he references a strategic crypto reserve, as of today, as of the recording of this, the names that have come up in addition to the obligatory Bitcoin and Ethereum, we're starting to see some seriously questionable names show up, like Solana, ADA, or SOL rather, and Cardano and Ripple. So just to give folks an idea of what the president and presumably his administration is contemplating predicating some percentage, and hopefully it's not much, of national sovereign wealth is going to be, or at least in theory, it seems like a good idea that it be predicated upon the same protocol or infrastructure that the Bored Ape Yacht Club and a million other NFT straight up money laundering crypto scams were predicated upon. Okay, so you're going to hold in strategic reserve basically the mechanism of the Bored Ape Yacht Club. Now that's the punchline, guys. That's it. That's the funny part, right? So the reality is these are, okay, Bitcoin is Bitcoin, and we'll talk about that in a second, but they're starting to reference stuff that almost would be considered one step removed or first cousin of meme coins, shit coins, whatever you want to call them, right? These are the overarching systems or coins or protocols that a lot of these so-called I mean cryptocurrencies, they're crypto scams and they're speculative scams is what they trade on. They rely on the mechanism of that coin to facilitate the trading element of it and so on, and being listed on exchange and the whole routine. Now I promise we're not going to get super geeky into this. We're going to look at this from a bit more of an economic and sort of techno philosophical perspective. We're not going to get into the nuts and guts of how it works. But here's the thing, guys. I am not by any means anti-crypto. It is very difficult these days to be critical of crypto without being labeled, oh, he's anti-crypto, in the same way that, as Dave illustrated for the last number of years, it's very hard to be functionally and scientifically and analytically critical of a jab, let's say, and not be labeled an anti this, anti that. Look, people are intellectually lazy at this point. They will slap the easiest label on it. They will codify it in the lowest effort way humanly possible, because that's the world we live in now. But the reality of the situation is, I just wanted to put a few concerns and ideas out there, because I can say this now: this will not end well. You heard it here first. And I know all the crypto bros are jumping up and down. They, hey, it's the greatest thing. It's the validation we've been looking for, for crypto. And that unto itself is terrifying. More on that in a second. But I'm going to be the one here to pee in everybody's cornflakes and say this is really not a very good idea. We've seen it in Argentina already with the Libra coin, where President Milley effectively pulled, as far as I know, the world's first sovereign level rug pull. He rugged his own citizens, which was kind of hilarious. And then, well, actually, no, technically, that you can almost say that was Trump, right? So with the Trump coin and the Melania coin, the Barron coin, and those were straight up meme coins. But I think people knew that going in, so I'll cut him a little bit of slack on that. Not much, but I think President Milley of Argentina kind of had a bit more of a serious economic take on what he was doing there, and then all of a sudden just rug pull and kind of smoked half the citizens base financially. So that aside, however, here's one of the concerns that I have. Like I said, apart from the fact that you're talking about adding and almost putting on the same playing field Solana, Cardano, XRP, Ripple, you're going to put those in a sovereign wealth fund. I know it's not implicitly stated, but you're going to kind of even vaguely and broadly suggest that they're on the same level as a store of wealth like gold or silver or federal land and stuff like that. And that is ultimately what I think is so dangerous about this is because there's going to be an air of legitimacy lent to crypto that it doesn't deserve. And that's what's required for it to function. If you think about it, and I've said this many times and I've gotten a lot of heat for it, and so is Dave, but if you think about it, crypto is just US dollars with a slightly more interesting story. They're not backed by anything, thanks to things like Tether. Again, more on that in a second. Thanks to things like Tether, you can almost pretty much kind of manipulate and lever the price and really just print stuff out of thin air at this point, if not directly, certainly by proxy through so-called stable coins. And what these cryptocurrencies require is the greater fool theory. They're worth what they're worth because people believe that's what they're worth, and that's what they've been conditioned to, that being worth. And that's why you'll see a lot of these guys coming in now long on top of it because they know a sovereign wealth fund adds legitimacy. Because I've always said the crypto bro and then the well, folks that really are hardcore traders of this stuff, they wake up every morning and they're terrified of one thing: people realizing that these things aren't worth anything. They're backed by the cubed root of jack shit, and they're really just fiat with a marginally more interesting story, right? So decentralized, that doesn't fly anymore. There's only a finite number of. Sure, there is until you pull out, there's only 21 million Bitcoin. Yeah, that's great until, Bitcoin V 2.0 comes out. And, well, there's only 21 million Bitcoins, but there's 846 gazillion other kinds of, crypto out there that could become popular at any given time. So that artificial scarcity argument doesn't really fly with me. But what terrifies me about this whole thing is that they are going to, and the Trump administration and by proxy, those around him, guys like Howard Lutnick, who do have an interest in stuff like Tether, because certainly there's no conflict of interest there. My concern with this is that this is going to be the ultimate pump for crypto. In other words, it's going to placate the fears of the crypto bros a bit by saying, see, the government is buying it. Or, it's totally legit. It's really money. No, it's really currency for real. It's not worth this because of a combination of manipulation through stable coins and a million other things that really pump the price of crypto up. Now, I will say this, guys. I have damn near zero exposure to crypto. I refuse to. And my reasoning behind that is very simple. I can take an L. I do not mind it. Anybody that trades, anybody that invests, you got to know how to take an L. You got to know how to lose money. Okay. And you got to not take it personally. Here's the thing, though, with crypto, because of the way it moves, there is zero rational thought or analysis that goes into anything. And whilst I don't mind taking an L, I do mind taking an L when there's nothing I can do to stack the odds in my favor, other than follow the latest influencer and smash my face into the keyboard when somebody says, hey, buy this coin, it's the next great thing. And all the hordes of desperate minions Zerg rush that the exchanges and they buy these things up. And I hope like hell that I'm one of the first ones in the door and I'm not there when it gets rug pulled. Right. So that L I can't take because of the sheer level of idiocy associated with it. And that's just the way it is. Cigarette number one of this whole of this deal. But here's my other concern also is you're going to tie some function of sovereign wealth, any function of sovereign wealth. You're now hostage to the fidelity of various exchanges and institutions. We just recently saw Bybit get smoked, hacked for $1.4 billion, at least what they're publicly admitting to. This is not a perfected system yet. Okay. This is not a perfected system. It's not bulletproof. It does get hacked, and it is, to some measure, still the Wild West of technology. Not nearly as much as it used to be, certainly back in the Silk Road days before, mom and pop got Bitcoin and Ethereum and all that fun stuff. So, but the reality is you're gonna predicate the value of that portfolio, whatever it may be comprised of, Ripple or Cardano or whatever shitcoin they invent tomorrow at this summit. You heard it here first. Um, right? So you're going to predicate that upon things like Coinbase, crypto.com, Robinhood, and Charles Schwab's retail platform, Bybit, Binance, all these systems that were built very quickly with very little forethought, right? To provide a need and to act as a butterfly net in a cash stream, to function as an exchange, right? And that's nothing against the developers and the people that put that stuff together, because look, it is extremely complicated. It is extremely hard work, but these are not. It's not the New York Stock Exchange, and I know tongue-in-cheek punchline joke there, but it's not. Those levels of fidelity are not in place. Okay, so you're going to tell me that you're going to have, let's say, I don't know, 100,000 Bitcoin or 100,000 Ethereum, whatever, in your strategic reserve, and all of a sudden something significant does happen. Let's say Coinbase blows up. Let's say crypto.com or something like that blows up, right? You're going to see a crisis of trust there, or crisis of confidence. That's the only thing that props up crypto. There's no intrinsic value to it. There isn't. Scarcity doesn't mean value. Plaid dog shit is scarce. Doesn't mean it has value or it's desirable. So the idea of just making things rare and therefore they have value has been exploited across every industry in the world. Gaming is a great example, right? It's rare, therefore it must be expensive because it's worth something. No, it isn't. And that's the kind of the idea that a lot of all cryptocurrencies are going with for the most part, because there's no real tangible or functional backing to them. So, be that as it may, crisis number one, it can come out of nowhere and be completely extrinsic of any government action, which is, okay, let's say, again, Coinbase or Binance. Let's say Binance just explodes. Okay. And now everybody freaks out because, oh no, Binance exploded, and everybody does the anchovy dart, which is what I refer to crypto investors as. They all dart in the same direction, but nobody knows why or who started it, which is, if you've ever seen a school of anchovies move, you get this whole big wall of fish. They go, holy shit, we got to go this way. Shoop, but nobody knows why, and certainly nobody knows who started it. So the point of the story, though, is you're now exposing sovereign wealth to the ability of a private sector industry. And I know that's the case with the Fed and the dollar. There's exposure to the banking system, whatever. But you're talking about a far younger, a far newer, admittedly more tech forward, but one could make the argument less stable, less resilient private sector industry. So that's problem number one I have with that. Problem number two, and this is for all the crypto bros out there that are jumping up and down and cheering their rear ends off, that it's great that they're adding this to this strategic fund, that it's the validator that crypto is waiting for. At some point in time, the U.S. government may sell crypto. They may decide that it's not for them. Another president may take office. Congress may act. We don't know. It's legislation, right? So that's a pretty deep pool to go diving in there. At some point, the U.S. government may have to sell crypto. And when that happens, crypto bros, pay attention. You're going to get a taste of what the treasury markets and bond markets and stuff like that often get a taste of when you see governments unloading certain types of securities, right? Just the same way that it lends validation to the story or the idea of crypto now, when the time comes to sell that crypto, and the government does inevitably, because look, I mean, let's say we have a Democrat president elected next. They just want to go pee in Trump's cornflakes and say, we're getting rid of that stupid strategic crypto reserve, not because they think it's a bad idea, but because he did it, right? So let's say they sell it. You're still going to feel great about that when you can potentially half the price, or 80% reduce the price, the market price, because everybody's going to go, the government's selling crypto, it's a scam, and everybody just loses their collective shit and just goes and dumps it. It's a double-edged sword. People aren't thinking of that because they only think, folks now, I'm fully convinced, have a 7-second window of reality. Plus and minus 7 seconds, anything extrinsic of that, forget it. It's obscure. You may as well need to be Nostradamus to figure that out. Anything that's more than 7 seconds ahead, 7 seconds behind reality, non-existent. So that's another concern I have with this. And the other is, again, you look at these exchanges and you look at Tether, you look at a lot of these stable coins that are used to prop up and manipulate the price of so-called blue chip cryptos. Mm. Like your Bitcoin. A lot of Bitcoin's pricing, and folks aren't aware of this, a lot of Bitcoin's pricing is predicated upon the ability of to continually purchase it with Tether, right? And Tether is a stable coin backed by US debt securities. Dave has mentioned this for the last couple of weeks. We've spoken at length about it. All right. And that is Tether pegged to $1. That's how it works. It's called a stable coin. So that way, when you sell out of your crypto and you go sit in Tether, it's a non-taxable event because you're technically not in US dollars, but you're in a cryptocurrency that's not really a cryptocurrency that can get printed out of thin air, um, that is allegedly backed by and maintains its peg to $1 because it's backed by US debt securities. Somebody actually thought that was a good idea. Again, I want to know what that meeting looked like. So, bearing in mind, Tether has never been audited, books have never been looked at, they've never given a straight answer on how much is backed. Is it 100%? Is it 50%? Is it 20%? We don't know. We have to take their word for it. And Howard Lutnick, who's part of the Trump administration, has a significant interest in Tether, and it's through his firm that he works with that's going to escape me at the moment. But Dave has mentioned it before on the radio, and Dave has mentioned it before in WTF. I think he's mentioned it in every segment that he's done at this point. It's just off the top of my head, I'm not going to be able to think of it. So, but he has an interest in it. It's like a 5 or 6% interest in this so-called stable coin that's allegedly backed by U.S. Treasuries. So you're going to tell me, crypto bros, that you're going to cheer for a strategic reserve of crypto, most of whom, a significant portion of whom's price, the liquidity of exchanges, the mechanism that the exchanges require to function in terms of almost like swap loans with banks is done in Tether. You're going to tell me that a system backed by nothing, ultimately hostage to a mystery currency that no one knows if treasuries that allegedly back it actually do. This all seems like a good idea. Okay. I've floated the hypothesis before that there are no treasuries backing Tether. There just aren't, because it doesn't matter at this point. They've done it recently where they print Tether out of thin air and they say, oh, well, I mean, look, if it's acting as a massive dumpster for U.S. Treasury securities, then I don't even think they even bother printing anymore, to be quite honest with you, because it's so out of control. Well, then guess what? That's doing the same thing that Euroclear used to do back in the day, which was act as a black hole for U.S. debt securities that they knew, would never sell on the open market. So this whole convoluted system is basically, and one of the things I mentioned to Dave yesterday, which is as such, the reason a lot of people cheer about the stuff that may not be crypto experts, and God knows I'm not one either. All right. I have a functional knowledge of how it works from a tech perspective, and I have a functional knowledge of how it works from an economics perspective. But that's it. I'm not programming protocols, I'm not cracking hashes or anything like that, because honestly, I'm not that interested in it. I can't be bothered. Because it's inherently, and for those of you that know the culture around crypto for the most part, of course, there's exceptions to it, but it's nauseating. It is absolutely a zero sum, don't think, just react, anchovy mentality. And I can't get into it, right? So, but be that as it may, um, you know, where we're at now, on the eve of this so-called crypto summit, this is going to be a big one. This is going to be absolutely massive. And I'm to a point now where with these guys that have interest in this, it's making, you're basically create, and here's where I was going with this originally. Sorry, my ADD style, as you can tell, I'm in a mood over this, and I try not to do these when I'm like fresh off of a meltdown, but here we are. The reality is, you're gonna have these guys like Lutnick and so forth, right, in there, and no one's questioning it because it's better than the Fed. That's the conversation I had with Dave yesterday, which is a lot of people that may not know everything they need to know about crypto, or even a tiny little bit of what they need to know about crypto, the concept of it, the philosophy of it, or whatever. They're just saying, yay, crypto, because it's the shortest line to abolish the Fed. Now, I get it. I don't like the Fed. Now, is crypto better, than the Fed? Yes. Other things that are better than the Fed include type 2 diabetes and fucking cancer. Okay. But that doesn't mean crypto is the be all end all and the ultimate solution, because the really, if you think about it, it's going to sound a little convoluted. I'm going to need you guys to stretch your imagination with me here a little bit. Is let's say there is a massive crypto failure for whatever reason, okay, and you get a run to zero, okay. Then the government can turn around and say, well, hey, we tried the whole crypto thing, and next stop is central bank digital currencies. And I know that's practically profanity on this and many other platforms, but absent crypto, that's your next stop. Okay. Especially if there's a reason to. In other words, say like, and again, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying it's very likely that it could. But let's say you have a failure of Bitcoin, a failure of Ethereum, or you have a massive exchange failure, or a series of network failures, um, a series of hacks, right? What they're really doing is, by doing this, is actually adding another layer to the payment processing system of the U.S. government, where what they're going in now and doing, like with Doji, where they can go in and audit and look around and see who paid who, how much, what, and where. You're going to give the U.S. government an ass ton of crypto. Good luck with the audit process on that one. Have fun. It won't happen. You know what I mean? So, and the thing is, along those lines, for those that are jumping up and down and saying, well, hey, you don't favor decentralized currency, that means you must like the Federal Reserve. No, the two do not have to exist mutually exclusive of each other, right? You can be critical of crypto, and you can certainly be, critical of the Federal Reserve as well. I mean, do we need the Federal Reserve? No, we don't. We really don't. As a matter of fact, that is, speaking of cancer, that is a big giant tumor on the United States. I'm just saying crypto may not be the answer to this, because it's not without its flaws, right? It's like that whole informed consent thing Dr. Dave likes to talk about. It's like, well, at least if you're going to get into something, for God's sakes, know what you're getting yourself into. So as we move forward here, guys, I just wanted to kind of give everybody a heads up on this and just provide some food for thought. I didn't want to make this very technical, but I did want to go on record saying this is potentially the embryo stage of something that could genuinely be really, really, really bad. And I know years ago I did a video on here and I said no countries will not be trading oil in crypto. And of course, I'm sure there's crypto bros out there going, no, he was wrong. They're still not. Okay. They're still not. They just won't. And the reality is, this is as much a bit of performative economics, a word I've come to hate because it describes most things these days as performative outrage and stuff like that, where everything's just 1 millimeter deep, 7 seconds long, look great. It looks great on TikTok, and then that's the end of it. Um, but this is potentially opening a massive can of worms that, look, I know it's not going to be the entire balance sheet of the U.S., but this is a dangerous experiment. And personally speaking, if they wanted to do something really meaningful, here's an idea, guys. How about Fort Knox? Try that. I know it's the barbarous relic and yada 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 yada, but for God's sakes, I mean, look, if you want to use someday blockchain as a ledgering system for ounces of precious metals, well, hell yeah, sign me up. I'll help build that system. That's fairly reasonable. Um, because the other thing people aren't considering as we move forward through this is, again, this goes towards, and it's one of the things that makes that barbarous relic so appealing, is that the barbarous relic doesn't have to worry about quantum computing, because for the most part, it's going to be building quantum computing. You do need a lot of precious metals to go into quantum and neural level processors, ironically enough. So, people jumping up and down saying, oh, it's got no value, it's just a rock or whatever. It's like, well, yeah, it's a rock that you can make world changing systems out of. So there's that. Um, but the reality is, guys, as we move forward, and Moore's law does what Moore's law does, which is every time you make a discovery, it shortens the distance and the time to the next discovery you're going to make. So technology advances ever faster. Uh, Quantum computing, Microsoft just released its first, really, and I won't say retail box because it's not, but their idea of a boxed processor, quantum processor, the very earliest stages and earliest machinations of it is prohibitively expensive. Would I like one? Yes, of course I would. Am I going to sell both kidneys to get my hands on one? No, because it probably wouldn't even be enough. But the reality is, as we head towards this an age where computing power, even if it's not quantum, is going to be advancing at a level that I don't think a lot of people are ready for. That will start to represent a threat to the security the decentralized nature, what little of it there is left of crypto. Okay. And people will say, well, it's so many qubits to Bitcoin, and it'll never be, you can never decrypt Bitcoin. You don't have to. There's other exploits there that can be done, cryptographic exploits that quantum computing makes positively easy. The analogy that I've used, I think I've used this once on Dave's show before. The analogy that I've used is, if you went back in time with a modern laptop or a modern smartphone, hell, a smartwatch, and you went back to the days of Alan Turing and Flowers, and you wanted to help them crack the Enigma code to find German U-boats. How long do you think it would take to crack the Enigma code with a MacBook Air? How long do you think it would take to crack the Enigma code with a 10-year-old crap PC? It wouldn't take very long because you'd have orders and orders and orders and orders of magnitude more computing processing power than they had in their old switch and vacuum tube Colossus, right? So just because it's not a threat now doesn't mean in a number of years that it won't be. And eventually within, I would say, the next 8, 10, 12 years, it is going to be that silly. I mean, we're going to look back at this time and we're going to go, holy crap, remember when we thought Bitcoin was encrypted? Or holy crap, remember when we thought all the exchanges had all this encryption on it for security, and now it's like any kid in his basement can go tear assing through that in 2.5 seconds? That is going to be the byproduct of basically an international arms race for computing power. Example, DeepSeek. DeepSeek came out recently. We have Sam Altman out there running his mouth about how great OpenAI is, and then the Chinese proceed to very quietly release an AI system that I am running in here right now, as a matter of fact, just under the desk here. There's another one of these racks under there. It's taller, but in the very top 1U space there, or 1.5U space, there's a server that runs LLMs, large language models. The one I happen to be running now is DeepSeek. And I will tell you, it is absolutely unbelievably amazing. So you see OpenAI saying we need all this wild computing power to run these AI models, and that is true. But the Chinese sort of came out and said, yeah, but you could also run ours on a potato, and that's cool. So those advances coming out of not just the United States, but coming out of everywhere are going to be immense. And I know it may seem unfathomable now, but 10 years, if you look at what's been invented in the last 10 years, not much, but if you look at the advancement in sheer raw computing power over the last 10 years, that's something to talk about. Okay. And as AI starts to find its way into weaponized applications, into sovereign applications, into governmental infrastructure applications, that power it's going to become an international arms race of sorts of AI power, especially when they represent a core component of frontline warfighting systems. So the point of the story, though, is anybody that doesn't think crypto is susceptible to an increase in computing power, it is. It may not seem like it. You may have been told that it's impossible and it'll never happen. And very smart people, or at least folks that sound very smart, have told you it'll never happen. Well, let me be the one to tell you it probably will. All right. So ahead of this crypto summit, the only thing I ask is that people just have their heads screwed on, kind of right. Just be a little bit critical of it, because the crypto culture, okay, is hype. That's all it is. It's don't think, just react. Anchovies all dart in this direction at the same time, right? And everybody buy it. As long as everybody goes along with it, it kind of reminds me of the old, like, stick $5 in an envelope. And yes, I am old enough to remember this. Actually, if you've been watching Operation Freedom for long enough, you've seen my hair go from, like a very darkish brown to now I got a hard time even getting away calling it salt and pepper. I blame Dave for most of that. No, I'm kidding. It's not Dave. Much. But the reality is, I'm old enough to remember when the old chain letters where you stick $5 in an envelope and you mail it to the next person, and somebody decides that, what, F it, I'm going to keep it. That's how it works. So really, do I call crypto a Ponzi scheme? Not implicitly, even though it pretty much is at this point, but because it's far more complex than that. And, to call that a Ponzi scheme, US dollars, Ponzi scheme, so on and so forth. And I know that word gets thrown around a lot, but it's not anything to predicate real value on. Now, it conceptually, again, is a ledgering system for something else. Yeah, it's great. It's what it's for. But still, we're 20 years into this experiment. We're 15 years into this experiment of crypto, and there's still no national or international mechanism by which you can tangibly or fungibly use crypto to purchase things. I know there's isolated incidents. I know there's that one guy in that one store and that one thing. And of course, crypto.com has their cards, which is just convert your crypto into US dollar. It's at the point of sale. So that doesn't even count. So there's no usability to it other than its speculative nature. So in effect, even Bitcoin, the so-called mother of all blue chips of crypto, right, is still no different than a shit coin because at the end of the day, it's purely speculative, right? They both have the same fungibility, the same usability. The only difference is Bitcoin's got a couple of gimmicks like, I know in the airport here in Pittsburgh, there's a Bitcoin ATM. Woo, great. It's been out for like 15 years. That's the best you got. You still you still can't really, unless you're willing to make some serious sacrifices. You can't just stop, using the banking system because you have crypto. Can it be done? Yes. Is it practical for 95% of people on the planet? No, it isn't. So again, this was, I admittedly, a bit of a rant. I know, but just watching people march blindly into, oh yeah, we're gonna have a crypto sovereign wealth fund and this, that, and the other thing. It's the first decision I've seen out of this administration where it's like, bro, really? Uh, okay. you know, and I know why, and I know why they're doing it, and I understand that it's, it represents a potential offset for debt and everything. And really, there's also the truly cynical side of me that says at this point, in the words of Bill O'Reilly, F it, we'll do it live because it makes absolutely no difference whatsoever because the numbers have gotten so big and so ridiculous. The chances of it ever balancing out or coming back to some compunction of reality is never going to happen. So that's the real cynic in me. But the more pragmatic, side of me is saying is certainly to the Operation Freedom audience, which is again, I have, matter of fact, just on this screen on the other side of the camera here, a Discord server full of some truly wonderful people. Um, None of us have any significant exposure to crypto. We are all so-called tech bros. We won't go near it for the reasons I've already discussed, which is we're not going to take an L because somebody woke up on the wrong side of the bed and decided that they needed more internet clout. So they're going to say, XYZ is good or bad. And, that's what the whole world is going to trade on because there's no real tangible fundamental metrics by which to trade. So, um, be that as it may, guys, keep an eye on the crypto summit tomorrow and look for crypto to be presented in a way that I won't call disingenuous, but it's going to definitely be geared towards selling it towards an older investment crowd that may not have crypto yet. This is going to be the hey, Mon Pa Kettle of 70 years old. You some Bitcoin kind of pitch. And that in and of itself, I take issue with because the learning curve now is so insane. And the best you can hope for is that it's represented somewhat correctly. But I'm going on record on this one. I'm open to be proven wrong. I'm not after any internet clout or anything like that because that's the new thing now. You can never possibly be wrong because if you're wrong once, you lose all your internet clout. It's a fate worse than death. I personally give a rat's ass. Um, but the reality of the situation is just be on the lookout and just listen. Not just tomorrow, but going forward, as this is obviously a crypto friendly administration, just keep a critical mind about it. And I hope this has been helpful. I hope we hit a couple of points here. And what I really wanted to do is just kind of launch some points out there for folks to think about and folks to talk about, maybe look at it in a slightly different perspective. I know this was not a PowerPoint presentation, carefully organized kind of thing. But this was just a brain dump of all the stuff that I've had in the back of my head rattling around and echoing around as far as like, yeah, okay, great, crypto. Yeah, I get it. We're tech forward, down with the Fed. That's awesome. But is this the way to do it? So, but I hope it's been helpful, guys. As always, I thank you for subscribing to the Operation Freedom platform and certainly for watching my little corner of the universe here, quite literally, the Department of Advanced Research. And hopefully you guys are enjoying. I'm going to be doing a segment with Dave here pretty soon. And we're going to talk about the new and improved website. But if you guys like the new and improved website, we do continue to improve it. That's myself and a couple of friends of mine have been integral in helping out and really getting that site to be a bit more modern, a bit more user friendly, a bit more easy to navigate and stuff. And our site that we had for the previous 7, 8, 9 years was great, but it was getting crowded. It was getting, Dave produced a lot of content. I mean, I don't know anybody that produces as much content as Dave. One guy, he wins. I know this because I had to rebuild my friggin' NAS server because I ran out of space because of Dave. Like he filled it up. I was like, Dave, I'm like, you're up to like 8 terabytes, bud. Could you stop? Nope, he kept going. So I had to completely rebuild my NAS server so I can keep all his Operation Freedom content all backed up and safe and secure. And it was like I'm spinning wrenches and screwdrivers here because Dave is just, I mean, an education machine. So be that as it may, guys, I thank you again as always. Thanks for being a part of Operation Freedom, and I'm probably going to do another one of these again soon, right after this crypto summit, and hopefully got a little bit of a laugh out of the intro. Um, and as always, again, I thank you guys, and I'll catch you on the next one of these. Be good.